Breaking news coming out of the Savage Lands, KO has regrown his limb. More after this podcast. Fresh and Buds now.
Fresh and
All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds. It is episode 157. Holy smokes. And we have Ethan ManSant back on the show yet again. How you doing, my friend? What's new?
Wow, I don't even remember how long ago the last one was, but probably a lot has happened since that episode and now, and I would like to think it's all good things as well. I'm pretty happy with how things are, so.
Yeah, I think, speaking for myself and a lot of other buds out there, we are also happy where, all the things that have happened. And it has been quite a bit. And I don't even know if we'd be able to scratch the surface on everything, but, figure we'll catch up a little bit. And then I want to talk about brutes, right? And there's even a question about it later. I play a lot of Riptide now, but, I know where my roots are, my brute roots.
Brute roots.
So we got to, I want to, who better to have on to kind of revisit what the hell's going on with brutes than Ethan ManSant. But we got a great show for you all. Let's get right into it. I mean, you've been doing a lot, right? With the Savage Feats and doing a lot of production stuff. Everybody knows about that. It's incredible. It's amazing. But the coolest thing about it is that you've gotten to travel all over the world. How have your travels been, and what are some awesome things that you've gotten to experience?
Oh, yeah, the travel really is, it's what hooked me with the entire selling point of Flesh and Blood's competitive system anyway, of play the game, see the world. I was doing that as best as I could all on my lonesome. But then to have a job that supplements, the cost of all the travel and some of, the planning of it as well, is really incredible. And the way that a lot of these opportunities come up are a little spontaneous. LSS will put out the schedule of events. I don't necessarily know which ones I'm going to be working up until we really start to lock things in, sometimes as soon as the month prior, sometimes even sooner than that. So some of these trips pop up out of nowhere, like the trip I had recently to Phuket. Oh my gosh. I only found out I was doing that maybe with 3 weeks of warning, and I could not have been more eager to say yes, do everything I could to go ahead and make that trip work. And it was with Punkage, it was with Sam, it was with Elliot, who I hadn't spent a ton of time with yet. It was also with Esmond, who is a behind the scenes producer for a lot of the stuff that goes on in APAC, and then he also is a big Magic YouTuber as well. So I just got to work with some new people, some old friends, and it married the whole work trip into just a trip with your friends, a trip for Flesh and Blood, a trip to the other side of the world, in just one beautiful way. It was incredible, and it's only the surface of so many of these experiences that have come out of Flesh and Blood, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, once you get to that point where you start to blur the lines of oh, I'm doing something I love. You could probably forget that you're working sometimes. That's what they say. If you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That's an oversimplification of things for sure, because I'm sure a lot of it's very stressful. But I got to say, the fact that you're getting to travel and see you get to travel, it's, as someone that I've grown to know you, I love to see it. It's super cool to see. We love what you're doing. And, we hope that you keep doing it. It's, and I'm sure you do too. So,
yes, I need it to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. But, there's no doubt, though, with all of that you are probably wearing a lot of different hats, right? And, whether it's because you still have a YouTube channel, you're still a content creator, but you're still doing this stuff. Obviously, the frequency of content creation changes when, you're working full time and doing all these crazy things and traveling. How do you manage what I assume is probably a difficult balancing act for you?
Yeah, it's got waves in terms of how hard it feels at times, because a lot of what I was doing in the early days of content creation or not content creation, but early days of the streaming career, was looking for a real job to also supplement the fact that it was a bit sporadic. And there was a lot of time, a lot of effort that went into looking for more real work because I'd been doing contract work up until a point, had this whole like move in my real life, and things were all tumultuous there. But then the streaming got to a point where, hold up, it's frequent enough and just demands enough of my time that like I can really work on this as a full-time gig, supplemented a little bit by like some merch drops with like Legal Levi selling some sleeves or the new Patreon tokens, just saying. And it kind of smoothed over into a really healthy living for kind of where I'm at in life. I am so lucky to basically have no real life expenses right now. My girlfriend is finishing her PhD, and a lot of things are kind of covered by the college. So it's a gentle, easy living right now. If that kind of changes, then we'll be in a lot more of a stressful situation. But um, after looking at how streaming has been for this past year, I actually do want to look again at getting a real job, just because I think, yes, there's a lot of time that's demanded by these shows and these productions, but it's actually gotten to the point where I've tried and tested so much. I've learned so much. I've got it like packaged down into, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this other thing? And those are just like modules I can plug and play, throw in the bag, know how to operate. Things are becoming a lot more streamlined in that sense. And so the exasperated nature of, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. I need to learn this, that, all that is kind of calming down. So I actually am looking at getting a real job again. And I'm also so lucky to have a grandmother who's always looking out for me. And she sent me this like ad, this flyer for a job placement opportunity at the local TV broadcasting station, WCNY. And it's going to be about a 14-week program. I had to apply. I got in, super thrilled for that. It's about a 14-week program before they place you in a job. Jobs. It's a lot of unpaid work, but it's fine. It's going to place me in a field that I am so much more passionate about than anything I've ever done in the past. And it's also going to put me in touch with professionals who can give me more advice on how to level up the card game streaming into something real. So that's starting next week. So the struggle of maintaining that schedule is going to start to be a big problem in my life again. But for now, I think the main balance I struck between just really making sure that these broadcasts have my full attention and then content creation, you've kind of seen it. I'm not going too hard on just spamming Levia videos. I don't think, I mean, maybe the want is there, sure, but I don't think it was a good use of time or a good use of attention span, even that would maybe contribute to some kind of burnout feeling. I really wanted to stay away from that because these shows are a lot of work, and then to come home and see Fab content creation as like another facet of work, that was a tricky spot every once in a while. So now I do it when it's really fun. When, oh man, this deck is actually Ballbreaker Levia is so cool, you guys. You have to see it. Now I let the content that I put out be more driven by just what I genuinely think is so cool and makes me love Fab. And if that's what's leading the way, then there's never burnout in that sense.
Well, the cool thing is too, you have your Discord, right? The League of Levia. And in a way, you've kind of created this hive mind for Levia where a lot of ideas are being discussed about the hero and the decks and the different, permutations of ways you can play her now. And, you can be like this kind of beacon, like, hey, here's this really sweet deck. And then they all do the hive mind thing, and it's really cool. And I think that's a brilliant thing, and almost like this awesome thing that you've created, in just through your videos originally and now into a community setting, which is super cool. Now, I do want to bring up Legos.
Oh, sure.
Because we see a Lego cat right behind you for the YouTube viewers out there. You've been making a couple Lego vids here and there.
Yeah.
We've all noticed they're very cool. I recall you mentioning it being a big hobby of yours. Obviously, if you're willing to do these videos, when did that start?
Well, I mean, my love for Legos started from before I can even remember. Like, I've got pictures of me as a toddler, like with Lego sets in hand. I don't even know how I was able to build them, but apparently I did. But I just remember growing up with Legos just being everything every Christmas, every birthday. The only thing I ever asked for was Legos. Like, no, I didn't pay any mind to anything else. I was so Lego centric, and just yeah, it was my whole childhood, and there were a couple big moments in my life as well that could have been the end of it. I mean, Hurricane Katrina destroyed my house. I lost everything, lost all my Lego collection, which I was 8 at that point. That's like probably 6 years of Lego collecting from family members, buying me all these sets, from just 6 years of collecting, all that gone in an instant. And yet life rebounded and slowly picked up sets again. My mom was like after work, she'd be looking on eBay to try to snipe some like old sets that I had really loved back in the day that weren't in print anymore, just to try to piece together that collection again. So due to the perseverance of like so many people, I was able to hold on to that hobby for like my whole life. And now I don't really like, there's the dark ages that kind of hit you when you're like probably a teenager, like 15-ish, where you don't really have the passion for Legos to the same degree. It's just the natural, like you're in high school, like you just can't at that point. They were still in my life, but that's when I had started experimenting into um, potentially stop animation, YouTube content creation, like even painting minifigs and like altering them in different ways, using them as more of a creative outlet than just like buy the sets, build the sets, maybe do something like that. And yeah, it just was something I dabbled in here and there, but had never really made a fully fledged stop motion back in those days. And I don't know, just didn't really think about it for a long, long time. Still have my whole collection. It's now upstairs and got sorted all through COVID. I like went back, broke out all my old childhood Lego and sorted it. I mean, it's a whole room of like shelves, bins, and it's all sorted. It's unbelievable. But that's what I did with COVID. And it then led to kind of this ease of once I had the idea for Lego stop animation, because everything, oh, I just need tan bricks. Let me just pull those out, build out this little Coliseum thing. Oh, I need minifigs. Let me pull out the minifig drawers. It was a really streamlined process. It was also like the first time I'd ever done anything with my Lego collection. It just sat there for ages. So I was looking for an excuse to do something for a while. And then when they gave me the Apex Bonebreaker spoiler, it was my first, not my first legendary. I had the Demi Hero, but like legendary equipment uh, felt so impactful that like I really wanted to give it a banger of a reveal video. And Heavy Hitters is also just such a fun thematic set for fighting and the Coliseum and all that. And those were definitely the stop motions I always experimented with, is Lego violence. Like, come on. So yeah, put that together, and it was my first try. I thought it came out pretty well. I was happy with it. I think the sound design is really the most strenuous part of those things, because you can sit down and storyboard out what you want to do, just take all the pictures, do all the movements, but then you're just looking at silent film, and you got to bring that to life, because especially when it's not that good. I mean, it's my first project. I needed to inject more life through the sound, because sometimes the frame rate was like pretty low. I should have done like probably 24 FPS. I was doing like 12.
Mhm.
So with that, yeah, I spent a lot of time just trying to like make it sound alive, and with some beautiful clips that I like pulled from Sam voicing the announcer, and things off YouTube. I think it really came together. And I was looking for an excuse to make another one at some point, and then Hemmel reached out about doing a new ad that would run on some of the live streams I do on Savage Feats. And boy, that was just such a long back and forth of trying to finalize a script, who's going to voice act, when can we get the lines in, because when you're doing a lot of voiceovers, you need to have the voiceovers done first, because there wasn't like any talking in the first one I did. But what I learned in the second one is that when there's lines of dialogue, you need those first because you're animating like over all of that. And I'm not doing like mouth movements, but the frames need to change. People need to move their heads, whatever. Like everything needs to line up with what's being said. And so that just added a lot of time to the process. But once it was finally done, boy, I love how that one came out. And it's a little tough to find, unfortunately, because it's not on my channel. It's on Hemmel's channel, which is like not really a content creator channel, just his repository for the 2 ads that I've made him actually are the only 2 videos on there. But it got run during like Canadian Nationals was, I think, the big reveal for it. I forget exactly what, but that video is amazing. And hopefully you can link it in the description because it deserves to have like 20,000 views and it only has like 200 because no one's seen it. I'm sure during the live stream, a lot of people saw it, but it's got Brian Gottlieb in it being exasperated with his little Lego hoodie on. It's got James White saying ship it to like literally every ridiculous idea. It's got the most depressing Olympia, just like it's so good. I love that video, and the minifigs came to life really well. Like that Arachne, I never in my life had seen that piece until Hemmel like was digging through Bricklink, because Hemmel's also a big Lego fan. He found that headpiece, and it's like 1-to-1 Arachne.
Wow.
Like we didn't have to do any, because I was worried about that. Like, how are we gonna get that hood right, the horn? Like, no, and it comes in like one blister pack set that's like accessory armor for a Ninjago character that's like that was never even on the shelf. It's like Lego store exclusive. Like it's just a totally innocuous set, and yet he found it, and we put together the figs, and oh man, that video, I can retire happy now for that video alone. Yep.
Well, it's very cool. I'll find the link and I'll put it in the description for the folks.
Yeah, good luck. It's hard to find.
Yeah, I think I'll find it. I'm a good snooper. Very cool, very cool. It's just so cool to see. You can always tell when people are passionate about things, and it's just exciting, right? It's exciting to watch something that someone that was passionate about it and it come to life like that, which was one of the things that's why I wanted to ask you, because it's pretty cool. So hey. And it's also, that's incredible. I didn't know that you lost most of it in Hurricane Katrina. Like at that age, that's like your whole life, right? Obviously it sucks. People lost a ton of stuff during Katrina, but like when you're a kid, like you have the things that you want and you have, and then you lose them. And like, I'm sure that was very tough, but it's very cool that perhaps it kind of parlayed into a love of Legos that was even stronger, and it's kind of coming back out now, especially since you sorted it during COVID. Very cool, very cool. But we got to talk about Flesh and Blood. The new classic TCG, as they say. I'm going to ask you some fresh faves from the most recent set, MST, which is a controversial set. But very cool, very cool.
Oh, sure. In my head, I'm thinking limited because I just got done with the Runaways podcast, and they praised MST, like S tier draft set. But you're right. There is this other half of MST, the Zen half. That yes, that limited, is not quite fun.
Amazing, limited. But Ethan, who was your favorite hero from MST?
Ooh, I think it's just new. Like the other 2 heroes just don't have, I mean, they've got like flavor, I guess. Zen does create crouching tigers. Is it really everything he's about? Yes, Enigma creates auras, but they come and go pretty darn quick, and the only one that seems to really matter is manifestations of Miragai. But the whole idea of these small advantages constantly of, oh, this little card, it's not actually a 0 for 3 ever because it could gain me a life. Like now it's a 0 for 4, but that's not just the vanilla stats we're looking at. It's also, what does it enable with attack reactions that can get played on top? Is it going to go tall? Is it going to be a hiss? Does it go wide? Does it just let you activate mask for more disruption? Like there's a lot of play in what New does, and I really think she's fascinating, really fascinating hero. And the flavor, when kind of aligns up with how that all plays, the succubus, the alluring desire, you're interested as well, even from the opponent's perspective. What is going to happen to this attack? I'm hoping that nothing leaks through, right? We're all safe, everyone's been tested, we're good, no issue here. But sometimes the venomous bite goes right on top. You end up with something you didn't want. And hey, that works for new, I think. So just everything about her is very, very cool.
Yeah, you got to be safe around new. I will
Mm-hmm.
say that. What's your favorite weapon from the set? Only 3 options, I think.
Yeah, are any of them that interesting? I guess like Cosmo, like Enigma wouldn't work really without Cosmo, so I've gotta give it there. And it's more interesting than a lot of the other um, weapons we'd seen before anyway for illusionist. So yeah, Cosmo.
I played against an Enigma over the weekend, and I was on the Fatigue Riptide,
Mm.
and they brought in Reality Refractor, I think.
Oh, the 2 for 5. Iris the
Yeah.
Reality is the 3 for 4 go again.
Yeah, the 2 for 5.
The 2 for 5. Oh
Yeah.
wow, okay,
Um,
bold.
yeah, I mean, I guess I think it made sense for the matchup. We went to Fatigue, but I got them.
Yeah.
But it was all in good fun. That was a Fast and Furious themed tournament. Very cool.
Oh, I saw that on Twitter.
Yeah,
Very cool.
it was a good
Yeah.
time. What's your favorite equipment from the set? Now we have a lot of options here.
Favorite equipment. It's tough because there are some things I wish changed about the equipment, and even Brian Gottlieb said this on, I think it was your podcast, where Traverse like shouldn't have blocked for 2. And I actually really feel that way more than anything about Kasaya, but I also love Kasaya. It is such a cool card. I love that they even stuck with all the accent marks or whatever it is on there, and it's just great art. The extended art is beautiful. Its effect with the Zen state, seeing it in real time on how long it took the player base to start to use and abuse that, and then to even see in like the top cut of U.S. nationals opportunities where it's like, what? Why didn't you Zen state? Well, hey, because this is still like one of the first tournaments with MSC, and even the best players in the US are like not catching on to it yet, to then get to Pro Tour where like we're seeing that top cut and it's like Zen State by turn 2. Like there was a lot of depth to the use of that card, and the cute mechanic of like being able to block 2 early and then break it like on a later combat chain. It's a very interesting piece of equipment, but I don't think it should have blocked. Like the passive resource gain is incredible. It works so well with what Zen's doing. Paper Descendant off it, boom. The Zen state itself is just a token that I love to see in the game, and really does numbers versus Viscerai, and we hate that hero. So I love that as well. Side effect, but the fact that it blocks 2 initially is like probably wrong. Like I think it probably should have blocked 1 along with Traverse. Is what I'll end it at.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there's a lot of defensive capabilities on such a high-powered hero, and we talked about it all last week, and things will change. We have a new set coming soon. What's your favorite card that you throw into your deck from MST?
Oh, Weakest Link, easy. Weakest Link is so it's interesting because when you start to look at like the impact of hit effects, Command and Conquer is this supposed ceiling of, well, it's like 9 value because you could deal 6 and take their arsenal. That's like threatening 9 value. But Weakest Link is threatening 12. It's a lot harder to line up because your opponent might read that like you have a card in hand anyway, so the fact that you're drawing card like doesn't matter. They might like not even have non-blocks in their hand, so what do they care? But like when the stars align and Weakest Link is 12 value, it's so awesome. And I got him signed recently. Federico was out at Pro Tour, so I really want that card to like always be good because I always want to play it. I love that.
It's like the perfect sideboard card, right? Like eventually a meta will come around, and we see it right now where it's gonna do some work and people are gonna play it. It's so cool. And this is a new question we've been asking folks. What class and what talent would you be if you were a hero from Wraith?
Oh, I remember Brian said Bard, which I don't want to just like copy his answer, but I think I'd likely just be a warrior, like as boring as that sounds, like I don't want to be the hero by any means. Like I don't want to be the one charging the fight. I just want to be like Bolton's Bannerman. Like I'll be there. I'll be there. I'm gonna have my stories to tell, but I don't want to be. Yeah, I don't want to be the hero. I don't want to be the target of like the magician in the back where they tell the archers like, go shoot that guy. Like nope, just I want to be one of the faces in the crowd. Be there doing my part. But yeah, not looking for hero moments. Not looking for I don't want to be painted with a target. None of that.
That's totally fair. I guess I would probably, if I were to agree with that logic, I would be one of the locals in Rowdy Locals, because that seems at least
sure.
a little fun. A little bit dangerous, but with a tinge of fun. Now, Brutes, it's a class in this game, Flesh and Blood. Ethan, you are very well known for your times playing Levia, creating Levia content, starting the League of Levia, but you've also played other Brutes as well.
Yes.
You love a nice 6-powered attack. You just named Weakest Link as one of your favorite cards from MST. We need to talk about these Brutes because there's been a lot happening with them since we last talked. And we had a whole set, you mentioned Heavy Hitters, come out, which is very cool. What were your thoughts on Heavy Hitters and what it did for the class?
Oh yeah, for Brutes, it was an incredible set. It was like a dream set, and it might have been most impactful for Brutes of the three heroes there. Like, yes, like Victor exists now, sure, and Kasai exists now, sure, but in terms of revitalizing the other like heroes in that archetype, I think Brute is where things lined up really, really well, because you've got not Mighty Windup, Agile Windup. Well, you can run Mighty Windup as well. Being an on-demand discard for Reinar's Intimidate to set up these savage beatdown plays just on a 4-card hand, like that's crazy. Something the class desperately needed discard outlets like that. You've got Levia who can use it as well to get instant graveyard fill. She abuses agility like better than freaking anybody. And Apex Bonebreaker, of course, is wild. I love like 5 value in an equipment piece is so strong. And yeah, it's also just, I mean, it had the most impact on the meta as well. I mean, like KO of the 3 was just performing incredibly well. It gave us a new Armory deck, which I know got a lot of people into the game. In fact, when I was at Gen Con recently, people were upset that the KO Armory deck wasn't available. They had the Azalea and the Bolton, but when people were kind of given the rundown of, oh, this is like the products you can buy into, I had multiple people ask, where's the KO deck? Because they would come to me at my booth. We'd talk a little bit about Flesh and Blood, and I heard it anecdotally, like, oh, I really wanted the KO deck. And like, that's just the fact that it like trickled all the way to me is wild. But I agree, like KO just is a very great starter hero, really fun to play. And thematically so freaking cool with one arm as well as like a balancing reason. And the fact that it just worked out that way, really fun. And one more thing about it, I also think the Heavy Hitter set overall, when they debuted it at the Celebrational with the Heavy Hitters solo format, where you had to build a CC deck just using the cards in Heavy Hitters, was fascinating for the Brutes. I can't attest to like what it meant for the Guardians or Warriors, but I personally built the deck that Saint Hung played when he used he was the only Reinar out of all the invites. He's the only one who showed up with Reinar, and I built it for him like the night before in like very much just a value version where there's no Blood Rush in that set, but you're doing a lot of 2-for-7s, setting up a trade in an arsenal, and then like using that as a mini Blood Rush. And to figure out that little combo of like where it works, and I'm pretty sure he went undefeated in the Heavy Hitter solo. He like 1-2 and drew a game, unfortunately. But that deck was wild. And then Brody won the whole thing, and one of his decks was a Ball Breaker KO, which we haven't seen in CC at all. But the fact that like that deck existed in this Heavy Hitter solo format was also just so interesting to watch. Loved seeing it. So yeah, I forget the question was, but I can gush about Heavy Hitters Brute stuff all day. It's fascinating.
Well, you answered the question and more. It really did a lot. And, Ballbreaker, actually one of my favorite cards from that set, and loving to see you put out a video about Ballbreaker
Right.
and Levia. When Heavy Hitters came out, I was like, well, I'm going to test out Rhinar and I'm going to do the one claw, one Ballbreaker, because I was like, you know what? How often do the resources not line up where you can't get that little extra beef out of a Blood Rush? Might as well have a 4 or I guess a 6 coming in with the Ballbreaker. I mean, it just, and then throughout the whole game, you get like a decent amount of value out of it, which is pretty cool. And then, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but like what the set did for Rhinar is has left a little bit to be desired, but we'll get to that. But I do want to talk about KO because it definitely rose to the rank of top dog in the Brute world, right? There's no doubt about it, and was kind of racking up LL points. This is obviously before Mysteria, or part the Misfail, and people were calling for bans. I know ones. I mean, there's another podcast that was certainly calling for the ban of one certain legendary from Welcome to Wraith. I can't imagine what legendary
that's
that would
one
be.
person. That's one person on one podcast. Yes.
Well, hey, listen. When I had Cody on the podcast, he was singing the praises of banning Scab's Kids as well. I was like,
he comes from Destiny. The man rolls more dice than anyone in Fab. Come on.
But I want to know, like, certainly KO looked to be kind of on the fast track for LL. All of that changed. We know that now. Hindsight's 2020. But at the time, did you think that the calls for bans on KO were warranted? Or, because I think we look back at that meta as like kind of fondly now because there was a lot that you could do.
Yeah, so I think the KO effect was just wild to observe, because what I really think was happening was people, for the first time ever, played a Brute and understood that Brute was strong. But I'd been playing Levia forever, and there are moments in the game, less so now, where she felt absolutely awful, and I understand that it turned a lot of people away from that deck. But there were also moments in her games where she feels like the best deck in Flesh and Blood, bar none, like unbelievably powerful. And KO kind of sat in the middle ground where his lows were never that low, unless you went out of your way to like roll a 1. But then his highs, compared to Levia's highs, really not great. But they were still enough for people to buy in and have this appreciation for how consistent his damage was. Oh, he can do 2-card 9s with bare fangs. Like, okay. And for a Levia player, it was just wild to see how just that kind of consistent numbers deck had people calling for bans, because our end goal as Levia players is to just be the consistent numbers deck. Like that's like actually the best Levia can be, is the consistent numbers deck. And if like that's enough for people to cry over bans, it's ridiculous. And yeah, I don't think he was anywhere near strong enough to really warrant bans anyway. And especially watching the top 8 all the way through, I think Arthur Trehe's games, specifically into KO, are just an incredible resource for anyone who's ever screaming about like a deck being oppressive. But if you go back and watch how he grinds through these KOs and like puts them in positions to lose value here and there, because his deck doesn't play into any variants, but the KO deck like does a little bit. All those moments ended up with him winning the whole thing, and the KO decks not. So sure, if the KO decks like are a little bit more lucky here and there, they probably do take you all the way to the top. So that's going to turn some people away at the door just initially. They don't want to play a deck that has any variants tied to it. But I think that needs to be there in Fab, at least a little bit, for people to be able to punch a little higher than they're supposed to, have that run. Actually, I think Brian talked about this, where Majestics in draft sets are there to facilitate that effect of, I'm not that great at draft. I'm learning. I really want to get great at draft. I opened this Majestic. Now I know what it's like to feel good at draft just because my deck was nuts. You can get that with Brutes more than any hero, I think, as well, where maybe you accept that you need to play into variance higher because you're not quite there yet, and it won't work every time. But when it does work, you'll know what winning an armory feels like.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling. You get that cold foil. You might keep it. You might sell it. Might trade it for something you want. You might now understand that the one win you had with KO and like the 6 armory scrub outs you had is just not where you want to take your Flesh and Blood experience. You can hang the deck up. You got your win in. To be a diehard Brute player is just such a unique experience, and I would like never ban anything in Brute. Like it's a perfect class. Perfect class. Definitely not scab skins, because even as a player who really wants to reduce variance in the games that I play, I just want Levi to be that consistent numbers deck and not play into variance as much. I have accepted there are some metagames where you just can't do that. Like right now, I think the consistent numbers machines are just not good enough. You need to play a little bit higher variance, and it will get you more wins than losses with some of these more refined builds. And like I've landed with the ball breaker list, and it's just such interesting deck building and like decision making. I just don't touch Brute LSS. It's such a good class. It's a perfect class.
I
And
don't.
Runeblade though.
I think that they, well, I think it was Pablo who put out his Riptide deck tech video. I was watching it, and he had this awesome joke where he was like, "Oh, sometimes Riptide can get these Runeblade hands," and then he looks like, "Oh, Runeblade used to be a class in this game," which is kind of funny, but it's probably going to be back in a big way, which is hilarious. Now, yeah, I agree, especially on the KO being, a great armory deck, great for people to learn the game and kind of like feel power in their hands, when things go their way, which is really cool. And I mean, the KO deck's perfect. There's no misses in the deck, correct? Like from
I don't agree with that, to be fair. I think the construction of the KO deck is a bit odd for what you're paying for it, but it's still it's still a good product.
Yeah. I mean, like it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We could. There should have been a couple other cards in there. Yes, for sure. Or a sideboard. Hey, put these in after you play a couple of games. That would be kind of a cool way to do it. Now, when KO was on the train to get LL, if Part the Mistveil never came out, Zen, we never saw Zen. We never saw what a real toxic aggro deck was like, anything like that. We're faced with the dilemma as Brute players that when KO LLs, Mandible Claws LL, right? So, as the loyal leader of the League of Leviah, what was the mindset in potential deck building in the world without Mandy Claws?
Yeah, so it's funny because there is precedent already for, like, when Kasai LL'd in Blitz, she did take both Centauri Sabers, not just one. Because some people, for a long time, were like huffing that copium about, well, it could just be the left Mandible Claw. Like, no, it will be both Mandible Claws. And when that happens, I think it will be really interesting for Leviah because she has viable alternatives, but I just don't think they've ever been better than the spikiness of either just sometimes ripping blood rushes off the top. Why not have that ceiling? Or the consistent game plan of, oh, this matchup is going to like really punish a long game. I need to set up a 4-wide blood rush. Like, blood rush is just so integral to playing both sides, like to have a ceiling versus aggro sometimes, have that obscene damage versus like a control deck, that losing the claws to facilitate it just will be tough. It will be tough. The other weapons don't just slot in and fix those kinds of game plans. You can play Hellhammer in a similar fashion to like what Zephyr Needle Zen is doing, of just, we're only going to play like a 3-turn game. We might as well get the best rate possible, and just throw this freaking hammer. And it works kind of. It works better in Blitz because you just present lethal so much faster. In CC, you might have like a strong opener where you throw a Hellhammer at him and you get all this damage through, but then you teeter off because Leviah can sometimes get like a 6 damage turn. Like, that's just all she can do. You want to pretend that her turns like are at minimum, at minimum 9, like at minimum some endless mob play upwards. But like that's just not always the truth. She's not chock full of go again. the way that Zen is. And so games can just progress in a way where you really do miss your weapon. It's gone a little bit longer than you wanted it to. It doesn't feel great. It feels good up until the turn goes like 2 turns long. The game goes like 2 turns longer than it's supposed to. So then you might think, okay, Hexagore must be the solution because it's same cost curve. You could just like slot it into the same deck. And I think you probably can build a deck to do that for the long games. But then the issue becomes it's actually really tough for Hexagore decks to set up 3-wide plays. Because if you want that much go again, actually now Shadow Realm Horror is out now. It might be a little bit different. But normally to inject that much go again into the deck meant the draw discards. And the draw discards just don't have any synergy with Hexagore. They have synergy with Claws. Go again's incredible. But they don't have inherent synergy with Hexagore. In fact, Hexagore can put you in a lot of positions where like you need to have those off turns early, like you need to block because you want to then banish these cards and like ramp up into Hexagore. Like you actually have phases to your game plan. But if you take like the draw discards so that you have more like 3-wide Hexagore turns, which is when you actually are powerful deck landing damage, they just don't really work well. Like you can 2-card 6 them in the early game. Yeah, but it's not like anything super special. You get punished later when they are non-blocks. They don't turn off Blood Debt. Like it's tricky to build Hexagore decks or Hellhammer decks that are just any better at using the Brute toolkit than a Mandible Claw centered list, because there's too much synergy in having weapons that are like costed well for your deck and that get go again. Like it's so good. It's so freaking good. And no other weapon has go again in the Brute suite right now. So that's what I'd be looking for in potentially Monarch 3.0. They give us some kind of Shadow Claw equivalent. I don't think it would ever be as simple as banish 1 and gain go again, but maybe like a tiered effect like Shadow Realm. If you've banished 1 this turn, you can attack with it. If you banish 2 this turn, it has go again. If you banish 3 this turn, it has +1. Like something like that I could see now that they've delved into that design space. And Monarch 3, I think, is next year, right? So I don't even think KO is like going to LL at all.
Yeah.
Like anymore. The deck is, it ain't. People wisened up, let's say.
Yeah, there could be some events that happen within banned and suspended announcements that could put KO back in the top tier of decks, but we'll see. But Levia currently is still a really great numbers deck, as you said.
She's insane.
And how do you feel about her right now in this Zen world, considering that she did have some mild success in Amsterdam?
Mild success? She freaking top 8'd. What the?
Hey,
like
go bigger
Levia,
home,
Okay. So then Azuri's the best deck, and even Zen's trash. Oh, you're right.
So true.
So it's kind of funny because I think in heavy hitters, Levia was actually like the best deck, but no one played her in heavy hitters. Like that was the numbers meta. The numbers meta. And she just really has the best numbers when you play her with this like intuitive feeling and understanding of the deck. And like, I get that it's hard to get there. And a lot of players on the team on Runaways had a similar issue where they would play a couple games, have some really good ones. They played a couple games and have some really bad ones. And to be able to even make the bad games feel more medium, maybe you're even making some decisions in those stompy games that make them a little bit more medium. But like you as the Levia pilot are trying to avoid the lowest possible outcome, the worst possible outcome. And just not a lot of people are there. Not a lot of people are there. But in heavy hitters, my God, if I was playing at Pro Tour instead of streaming it, not going to say where I'd place. I'm going to just tell you.
I mean,
that would have been the run. That would have been the run. Luckily, in this meta, we got to see a similar run, making top 8 with a Levia pilot from Germany. And I don't think now, meta-wise, she is any better at all than heavy hitters. Like the meta now has actual threats to Leviah specifically, where the heavy hitters meta kind of had a numbers check across the board and a mechanics check with Dromai that you did pass. Now it's a lot more centered around disruption and very fast aggro. And those are more problematic axes for Levi to play into, because super fast aggro basically makes Leviah play a short enough game that you don't get your spikes. Like, Leviah needs to have banish fodder, flip into consumed, abuse those consumed for her like peak performance in an aggro matchup. In an aggro matchup, like, sure, you can also rip blood rushes, but that's just luck of the draw. Game plan wise, what like you need to happen is to get ahead on card value in that end game when you're both trading, because you can get close. You can race, get to this like must block state, ignoring whatever consume's doing for you, but then you're under pressure, because if you completely block out, you die to blood debt, and you always have to keep at least 2 cards in those states. And like sometimes decks are built in late game to like never let you keep 2 cards. Sometimes they let you keep 1 card, and decks with like a hammer can stabilize in those positions. Leviah like can never do that. And so aggro is just like, it's very tough. And Zen specifically almost never lets you get the flip off, which is where you can salvage those aggro games. Dash.io is a similar problem. Like, those 2 aggro decks are very, very tough for Leviah to do what she wants, to have a game plan level advantage over just we're throwing numbers at each other, and then guess what, my end game is worse than yours, because that's what happens in like 90% of the time. And as we saw in top 8, Zen has high rolls that are just uninteractable for many decks. Even decks with disruption can get rolled over because they just like block with their armor and ignore it. But for Leviah, who has like realistically no on hits, there's nothing you can do when Zen just says, "Oh, I deal like 70 this year." Yeah, bro, I got it. Like, you just can't do anything. The deck is very fleshbag immune in ways that are annoying, with crouching tigers. Also, the fact that sometimes like their hand is just an extra chi anyway. Like, they don't really need that. Like, their hands can just get so massive that the pieces that enable their hand are very hard for your fleshbag to hit. It can happen. It can happen where you hit like the exact card, but odds are just not in your favor anymore, which is tough, because fleshbag should be a card where it's like so face up. Levi comes in with like Dread Screamer, pitches a blue, has 1 floating, 1 card in hand. I fleshbag now. That blocked a Gravelink. Like, it just did, you know. And there's plenty of examples like that. But for Zen, it's tough. You can't really do that. And then there's the on hit part of the meta, which takes a lot of player skill to navigate around. It's mainly new. I think Azuri is a lot easier for Leviah, but those are hard matchups for people exploring the hero. For people in franchises with the hero, they can still be tough, because you might have certain play patterns that are just not up to date to how the new builds currently are, to how the new players have learned to approach matchups, things like that. And so it's like you're tough. You're walking into a field where Zen is absolutely your worst matchup, and you're facing News, who like might outsmart you. You are like really trying to outsmart them, and your deck is better than what their deck is doing. Like, I promise you, Levi is like naturally favored in that, but the opponents can actually play those games differently, that abuse how you are used to playing into those matchups. So she's tough. Like, the deck is so good right now. Horror busted. But the meta is not as kind. And props to the top 8 Leviah, because I really didn't expect that with the field that we had. So like, truly, that's a huge, and it's a split format event, so there's some of that as well. But like, it's still very impressive to see Leviah now. It's not just that she's like broken with horror. Like, I guarantee you, it was a tough run. So no, not super happy with the other decks. I'm happy with Leviah right now, but I'm not happy with the other decks around her.
Yeah, understandable. And you know, the scaling fleshbag into Zen thing is tough. I mean, I experienced it with the collapsing trap that fixed a Zen's hand.
Oh, beautiful.
That was just like, I mean, my opponent was like very nice. Was like, I'm sorry, but you just gave me a better hand. I was like, it just is what it is.
Hey, but I blocked 3 and dealt you a damage.
Yeah, that's four value.
Woo.
Right there. But I do want to talk briefly before we get to some listener questions about the third brute, Rhinar. Now, when I saw Assault and Battery, my spoiler card for heavy hitters, I saw Beat Chest for the first time. I hadn't seen KO at that point, and I'm looking at this card. I'm like, okay, chosen discard has to be a 6 in brute. Seems like a no brainer in Rhinar. I'm excited to see what's like going to happen in the rest of the set. And people have admitted that it kind of fell a little flat for Rhinar, but we just saw Splatter Skull, which is a very, very cool card. For those of you who don't know, 2 for 6, and then if it hits, you can take an intimidated card and discard it, correct?
Basically, yep.
So, what are your thoughts on Rhinar? Where's Rhinar going to go? Is he going to finally have his time in the sun? Now, he's had decent amounts of success in the past, right? He'll win a calling here and there, spike tournaments. But
this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
So, actually, at the last Pro Tour I got to play in, I was the highest placing Rhinar, just barely out of top 32, and honestly threw away that entire tournament run over forgetting about Stalagmite. That's a different story. But Rhinar definitely has metas where mechanically he is just a monster.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be metas where Intimidate matters. And we have just not really been in a meta where Intimidate matters for like 2 sets now, at least, if not more. And I don't see Rosetta being a set where Intimidate matters either. Wizards and Runeblades are naturally more aggressive. And even with like a life-gainy style Runeblade and Wizard potentially, that doesn't read to me so much as like blocking with cards for life gain, but just like converting cards to life gain, which means you're getting like defense out of playing cards rather than blocking them. They're just like an initial read. And so that doesn't mean Intimidate does anything either. So this type of card is really trying to marry that mechanic together with people actually having to respect Intimidate. And I think it's definitely like it will do something.
Mm-hmm.
But will Rhinar do something overall? And I just don't think so at all. I think he's still just like miles behind KO and Levia, unless the Intimidate mechanic overall is what's strong.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like one quasi hit effect that makes Intimidate on that turn matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's a shame. You would like to see Rhinar, kind of get a lot. You would have thought like a lot of tools, and like there is really cool tools, and like obviously you mentioned like the windups, awesome in Rhinar, right? Just like on demand, intimidate. You can send the Splatter Skull, and then when they say no blocks, intimidate you real quick, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty nifty. Yeah.
But we'll see. What happens with Rhinar. I hope he has his day in the sun. Maybe Florian is blocking a lot more, making embodiments of Earth, so wants to block. So maybe you can kind of, punish Florian. But if Florian's not good, it doesn't matter. We will see. But I don't know. So this brings us to the final question: are brutes okay, Ethan?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're more than okay. Like they're the best class in Flesh and Blood. Like it's just for learning the game, they're incredible. For wanting to try something new, like they're just very different from a lot of other classes. For wanting to try hard at events, there are decks you absolutely can pick that will send you to top 8 of the Pro Tour apparently over KO. Get out of here. There's constant support for brutes. Like I don't think anyone complains about brute support. Like it's always been a trickle. And we know that like Monarch 3 is coming out. That's going to be some like Levia support at minimum. We just had the KO deck. Like there's nothing wrong with where brutes are at within the game and in terms of like a support angle, I think they're great, more than okay.
Well, thank you. We always appreciate you coming on and wax poetically about Brute. It's wonderful to hear. We do have a couple listener questions before we say goodbye. These come from the Buds Discord. Anybody can join. It's in the link tree below. First question coming from Pat Shaw, who asks, how do you feel? How do you feel? A lot of these are kind of dunking on me. How do you feel watching me betray the League of Leviat every day with that home wrecker Riptide?
Oh no, it's okay. Sometimes watching Tommy was a bit embarrassing, not gonna lie. He'd be doing so well and then just disappear and be like, Tommy, what? Like you are a pride and joy. So no, the Riptide boys have got that to deal with now. Or Riptide gang, Riptide Renaissance. Like, what do you call yourself?
The Lurkers. Well, that's what I call them.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. No, it's all good. Whenever you come back to Leviat, it will be because Hexagore is broken, and like that will just be exciting in and of itself. So
yeah, I mean that's it. I mean I've played Leviat one tournament since the Demi Hero came out. I was like, oh, she's good now. I can't be playing this deck. I gotta go find something else bad. And then I found Riptide, and he's awesome.
Oh man, so you actually play like the bad heroes. I play Leviat because I love it. It actually has nothing to do with the fact that she was trash. In my mind, she was busted.
Oh, well, I saw that too. I wanted to prove that she was good. But then, like, you know, I don't know. I just like an uphill battle, Ethan. I can't help it.
Yeah.
I can't help it. Capolo asked, how much does Tommy let you listen, I'm not letting Ethan down. How much has Tommy let you down now that he's not done the Leviat cosplay yet, even though he reached 500 subscribers months ago? Listen.
There's no excuse.
It's a work in progress. I'm in the living situation's not great for cosplaying, but I'm waiting for the right event. You know?
Okay. How about why not this December? You know, for the realm.
In Charlotte?
You can see the big one in December. I've still got my Dread Screamer up there, which I did for the realm last year. It's really fun to actually like love the cosplay you're doing. So you gotta start. You just gotta start, and then it's what you want to spend your time on.
I'm bringing it to Charlotte, folks. The Realm 50K adult Leviat cosplay. You heard it here first. It's a work in progress. I have the stuff over here. It's just kind of collecting dust. Right. It's very daunting. It's very daunting. And it will happen, Capolo. Thank you for bringing it up. Squire RCG asks, I have a deck-oriented question now that Ethan has moved on to faster-paced Leviat with Wild Ride Pulping's Ballbreaker. Does this totally rule out decks that play previously known cards such as Tear Limb from Limb? It's kind of a crutch for me. Love swinging 16 with Swing Big, and Shaden Death Hydra ceiling is cool.
Well, nothing is ever ruled out with Leviat's deck building potential because actually in the league I just dropped the Blitz deck that I've been working on, and it does play Tear Limb from Limb and it does play Swing Bigs. I think the difference in the Ball Breaker list is legitimately like a trend towards using Ball Breaker as the chain ender. Like a lot of what that list is trying to do is end with the Ball Breaker, because you can play some matchups like Zen where you just pretend it's another Mandible Claw and roll scabs. But that's like not the point of why it's in the list. And with the Tear Limb from Limb stuff, it naturally wants you to add the chain enders to the list, like Swing Big. Great card with Tear Limb from Limb. Even better when you go Claw into Swing Big off perfect 2 blue pitch. So good. So good. But that is asking for chain enders in the Swing Big slot. It also is really strong with Slithering Shadowpede, because then you can get the 3-card 12s off, where you pitch blue, Tear Limb from Limb, Slithering for 12. Those then also want you to add Art of War back, because Slithering obviously is good with Art of War, Swing Big obviously good with Art of War, because now you're like converting these chain enders into go wides. And so in those lists, like Tear is so good. Like I absolutely stand by Tear Limb from Limb. Figuring that out for the Realm event last year was just like the biggest eureka moment in Leviat. Like that card was nuts. I still think it is nuts, but in playing the Ball Breaker list, which I'm not saying is just better than, but it's more fun, and the results speak for themselves. In the little Flesh and Blood that I've gotten to play, the Ballbreaker list is performing insanely well, so I just don't see why I would change back to the old ways. But no, it does not rule it out. They are different decks, and if you want to play them, go play Blitz, because you need to swing big for 16 sometimes, because it just like wins the game on the spot. Like it's good. It's good in that format.
Yeah, and you get to play Ballbreaker. Ballbreaker is just like, it's
Right.
awesome to play. You know, there's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
the
that.
list initially was breaking balls with mini meat. It's too good.
It's cute names. Cute name. Last question comes from William from the Table Pit. Simple question here: should I quit my job? I said no.
Yes.
Okay. State your reasons why, Ethan, right now.
Well, I think the content that William puts out is incredible. It's like, it's such a special part of the Flesh and Blood content ecosystem. I haven't watched as much of the live talk show as I would like. That's kind of my content gap in what he does. But the game shows and the Ultimate Pit Fight content and like the story times of like building the playmat and all that are just, they're really special, really well done. Man has incredible passion, really good at storytelling, really good just sense for YouTube. I think the issue is the fab scene is not really big enough to quit your job for. Like I did not quit my job for Flesh and Blood content. I like experimented when I lost my job anyway in full-time Flesh and Blood content as like the content creator perspective, like what he's doing, and it was not good. I mean, streaming like I think it was like up to 4 days a week, every week, like over that one summer, I made like $100. I mean, it's like it's just not there. There's nothing in the ads watched. There's like shilling for donations and all that like doesn't feel great, but like you'd kind of need to go that route. Sponsors are like pretty infrequent. Like I've had sponsors on a couple of videos, so it was like DM Ramada Sloop Dupe, but they're infrequent. There's just not enough there to make it a full-time job. Savage Feats as a production company, that's a real job that works beyond the bounds of Flesh and Blood as well. Like the intent there is to just offer this service for any card game. Done a little bit for Alpha Clash now. There's going to be some feature stuff with like Warlord, maybe some of the bigger IPs as well. And unless you can find something like that, like a real job opportunity in the card game space, I would have to say no. But I do think Williams' content is, if it was like Magic, for example, and the viewership base was massive, I really could see William like living off of it for sure. I just don't think Flesh and Blood will ever do that. No matter how much time he puts into it, how much time and effort, how many, days you get to just spend fully on a video, it just like will not matter with what the viewership is or what the return on that viewership is realistically.
Well, I got to say, if anybody's listening to this episode when it comes out tonight, I will be on that live call-in show on the Table Pit.
Oh,
And we'll be talking about, hot takes and stuff like that. I snuck in like a week or two ago and I said we should be playing Yellow Sink Below. I got a little crazy. So Williams' content's awesome, tough to make money in Flesh and Blood. Ethan, though, you've been amazing. Thank you for coming back on the show. We really appreciate you here at Fresh and Buds. Please plug anything you need to plug. And, well, thank you again.
Well, thank you, Tommy. It's always a pleasure. Truly one of my, like the most striking silhouette I can picture out of Flesh and Blood. Not hero, not weapon, but it's you at Pro Tour, New Jersey with the booth. You had like the attached booth with the podcast mic. Like it was just an incredible visual. So thank you. Thank you for what you do as well. Thank you for that memory. And thank you for having me. As far as plugs, I mean, what I really want you all to do is watch the Brian Gottlieb, like the stop animation with like Brian and James White. Like that is my crown jewel right now. So regardless of anything else, you don't have to like Levia. You don't even have to like watching Flesh and Blood competitively, whatever. But some part of you likes Legos. Some part of you likes James White, because everyone does who plays Flesh and Blood, you should watch that video. It's so funny. So the link hopefully will be right below.
I will link it below. Thank you all so much. You can continue to find me on Twitter at freshbudspod. Like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube. Check out the Buds Discord. I have another podcast with my cousin called Fresh Juice where we talk about indie video games. Check that out as well. This should be all below. And finally, always like to end on food. I know you have some food waiting for you. What is it? And then we'll say goodbye.
What is it? It is basically like a fettuccine pasta dish with like some sausage. It's nothing too special, but it will be nice to cozy up and use that to end cap the night.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. And unfortunately, we don't have time for Charmer. Maybe when I do the Levi cosplay. Yeah, thank you all so much. Please stay fresh.